The conquest of a nation rarely begins with soldiers marching across a border. Long before the first cannon is fired, the groundwork is laid in a quiet room with an ink pen and cartography. In 1871, British military teams arrived in the Levant under the guise of innocent religious exploration. These surveys cataloged precise military intelligence, quantifying every mile of the terrain for future imperial division. This created a permanent disadvantage for the native population. Palestinian geography was being actively defined and prepared for erasure decades before any official war was declared. Control over the initial blueprint dictated the reality of the land, turning the map into a primary weapon for the next 150 years. By 1937, foreign powers moved to carve up that geography officially. The British Peel Commission stepped in to dictate the region's fate through partition. They used those 1871 military surveys to draw a thick red border across the land. This divided the territory into unequal halves, ignoring the actual demographic reality of the native Arab population living there. Following the events of 1948, the focus shifted from drawing physical borders to a campaign of cultural erasure under the new Israeli state. A dedicated naming commission was tasked with an explicit mandate: purge thousands of indigenous Arabic place names from the official map. In the south, the Beer-Sheba region was struck from the record and renamed the Negev. Renaming the land fused modern territorial control with a rewritten history, turning the physical map into a psychological tool for permanent displacement. By the 1990s, imperial partitions evolved into a maze of internal boundaries. Diplomatic agreements like the Oslo Accords created a restrictive patchwork on the ground. This produced Area C, a zone covering 60% of the West Bank that encompasses the region's most vital agricultural land and natural resources. Dropping these restrictions into the red zone creates a cartographic chokehold around Palestinian villages, cementing the physical conditions for annexation. While the West Bank is fragmented, the Gaza Strip is being reimagined through a flood of day-after architectural blueprints from foreign think tanks. One proposal, the Gaza Riviera, outlines a 50-year corporate takeover that hands civil administration to private subcontractors. The alternative RAND ARC plan proposes a high-speed rail corridor linking the West Bank to Gaza through technocratic management rather than political sovereignty. In 2025, the Yellow Line established a new boundary for military withdrawal, an invisible wall where stepping out of bounds carried lethal consequences for civilians. These blueprints treat Palestine as a blank slate for investors and technocrats, replacing the pursuit of sovereignty with infrastructure and containment. The century-long campaign of physical erasure eventually moved into the digital world, facilitated by modern tech giants. For years, U.S. law required platforms like Google Earth to pixelate satellite imagery of the region. This transformed Palestine into a digital terra nullius, a land belonging to no one. But a new generation is reversing this process through decolonial countermapping. Using cameras attached to DIY kites and balloons, they bypass satellite censorship to capture high-resolution images of their own land. Tools like the iNakba app use this data to inject the GPS coordinates of over 600 destroyed villages back into the record, overwriting modern political borders. This local resistance now reflects a turning tide in global diplomacy. Between 2024 and 2025, a wave of formal recognitions swept through the international community. From Spain and Ireland to the UK and Australia, 157 UN member states have now formally drawn the state of Palestine back onto the global map. A map contains a living memory. Empires and commissions have spent 150 years trying to delete this land, but the people who belong to it are finding their